Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop, Emerald Planet. All the ecology news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's your host, Executive Director of the Emerald Planet, Dr. Sam Lee Hancock.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we look around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technologies, the services, and the products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And of course, we're looking for the leadership that's going to make this transition as we add 2 billion new people to the planet by 2050. So how are we going to be able to provide all the basic infrastructure, the food, the fuel, the fiber, everything that's needed so that we have increasing quality of life and not just subsistence existence? And this organization is coming on. It's called Biodiversity for a Livable Climate, is actually doing something that very few organizations are doing. They're looking to actually stop and possibly even reverse the severe climate change that's going on. I just think this is a fantastic group. This is led by Adam D. Sachs. He is the executive director of this organization coming out of Massachusetts. And sitting right beside me as special guest, Dr. Jose Rios, who is a professor retired from the University of Puerto Rico. So Adam, welcome to the Emerald Planet TV.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Sam and Dr. Rios.
Glad to have you with us. Say, tell us a little bit about this Biodiversity for a Livable Climate. What's the origin of it, and then also the mission and vision that you have?
Well, I, with a number of colleagues, got together about 2 years ago. I had been a climate activist since the turn of the millennium and spent a good deal of my time interested in reducing emissions and fighting the good fight for alternative energy and signing the petitions and going to the rallies and writing articles. And somewhere around 2008, I began to realize that we weren't making the progress that we needed to make, and that emissions reductions, while important, were not going to get us to where we needed to go. And I began to study ecology and learn from friends more about the way the natural world worked, and began to realize that we needed to make a strong push for actually pulling the carbon out of the atmosphere, not just not put it up there. And we investigated a number of processes and practices on land, and we have been stunned with what we found, with how productive land can be made, and anything green you see growing, that's carbon dioxide that used to be in the atmosphere. And under the right circumstances, that carbon dioxide is turned into sugars and goes beneath the ground, and with the life in the soils becomes complex carbon molecules that are stable for years or even centuries. So that is a process for actually reducing the carbon in the atmosphere. And this weekend at our conference, Restoring Water Cycles to Reverse Global Warming, and you'll meet Michal Kravcik, a leader in that area, we've talked about how water cycles can actually cool the planet's surface, even with elevated greenhouse gases. So we have a number of processes that we can initiate on a global scale that are not only very inexpensive, but they are very effective, and anybody can participate in them. We don't need big decisions from UN bodies. We can do it in our own communities.
And that's something that we've been talking about for a long time. Let me fix this here. But you know, the whole thing about it, Adam, and this is something that you're actually doing it, which is most impressive, that we've been saying for years, that you can actually, we say, arrest and reverse climate change. And that's why I was just amazed that you folks are really doing that. And you're using very simple technologies. You're using things, in some cases, have been around for, you know, thousands of years. And we'll be talking about some of that. But what is your role as executive director of the Biodiversity Group? What do you do?
Well, I sweep the floors, and I clean up the messes, and I try to come up with ideas that help us move forward. And I do whatever needs to be done. We're a small organization. There are 4 staff at the moment. And we've put a good deal of energy into conferences because we felt that those are a good means right now of changing the climate conversation. And our mission at this point is to change the climate conversation to include sinks, biological sinks, so that we are pulling carbon out of the atmosphere and into the ground and restoring water cycles so that the biosphere can be cooled, as I've said. And I guess I'm the shepherd herding the cats.
Well, I tell you, that's absolutely fantastic. And we're doing very well as far as our link with you by Skype. So, Jose, why don't you ask the next question?
Yes, good evening, Adam. This is
Good evening.
this is Dr. Jose Colucci. One question would be, what do you see as the central issues in addressing climate issues and global climate change?
I think we actually have all the tools that we need. We can always learn more. We should always develop new tools, but there's no reason not to get started right away. The costs are actually less than zero, because when you restore healthy land and soils, you are creating increased productivity and social benefits and new markets and adequate water. So those are the basics.
Yeah.
Now, looking at Adam, people talk about there's kind of a pseudo debate, if you will, about whether there's climate change or not. And of course, 98% of all the world scientists that are really serious about this say that definitely the climate is changing. So what is dangerous about this climate change, not only to humans, but just all beings, as the saying goes, for plants, animals, insects, all living things? What are we faced with in all this?
Habitats are changing very quickly, far more quickly than many species can adapt. Excuse me. So it will be difficult for species to survive. We're at the beginning of the 6th mass extinction, which unfortunately is proceeding apace. And it is quite possible that humans are among the species that cannot adapt adequately. We talk about sea level rise and forest fires and tornadoes, and all of those are problematic. But where we're going to feel it the most is lack of water and lack of food.
Yeah, looking at this image that we have here, the root system going down into the soils with this small seedling they have here, what have been some of the climate change that you've seen, say, over the past 5, maybe even 10 years, but definitely the last 5 years, that really has been of the most concerned, but in some ways, some of the things that maybe is the most helpful and most hopeful?
Well, what you're looking at is actually not the root system of that seedling. You're looking at the mycorrhizal fungi, which are an extremely important part of the cycle beneath the ground. The bacteria break down the minerals and pass them through the fungi to the photosynthesizing plant, which trades sugars. And they've really got a little marketplace there, and there's a lot of intelligence in the relationships among all the soil biota, the fungi and the bacteria and the various other kinds of microorganisms and insects. And together, they make a living soil, which is resilient and holds a lot of water, as opposed to soils which have been stripped bare of their cover, which causes the soils to blow away and turn to dirt, where they're just dead, non-producing material that is a significant contributor to global warming. And we don't often talk about that. We're mostly talking about fossil fuels, but really global warming started 10,000 years ago when we began to till the soil and tear up the surface.
Yeah, and one of the things too, and then I'm going to let Jose ask the next question, but a follow-on to this is the research is coming out now as far as the harmonics and all that within the forest, how that actually trees and all types of living vegetation can communicate over not just tens and dozens of miles, but hundreds of miles. And so it communicates as far as the atmosphere, as far as the soil conditions, moisture, and all this. It's just absolutely amazing, Adam, what it is that you're doing and what you're finding out about all of this. Jose, next question.
Yeah, Adam, I know this is a complicated question, but how would you describe the New World vision and mission in reversing global climate change?
You mean our organization's
Well,
mission?
no, the world vision and mission that we would need in order to be able to reverse global climate change, which I'm assuming basically is also what the vision and mission of your organization would be too.
We have all the tools that we need. What we don't have is, as you say, the vision and the understanding of the way living systems work. We are mostly in cities now, and we are detached from our daily experience with the living natural world, and the supermarkets are full, and that's where our food comes from. And obviously that is not sustainable. So we need a vision of the planet as a system, as a whole, as a symphony that has to work together at every level. And when we pave roads and put up fences and pollute soils, we interfere with that process. And the feedback that we get from the system is often slower than we can recognize. But over generations, we see the disaster happen, and recently the feedbacks are coming faster and faster. So we need to understand that that's happening and steps that we can take in order to avert that. And I think Michael, who is going to be speaking next, will tell you about some extraordinary ideas of how the water cycle can be managed in a way to cool the biosphere and intervene in the destructive feedback processes such as massive forest fires that we see.
Yeah, Adam, we absolutely have just run out of time, so actually we've just ran out of time, but if you have about 10 seconds, what do you see for the growth of Biodiversity organization? And we need to be quick.
I think that there's great potential for us and many other organizations doing similar things. We've got a lot of potential allies out there, and we just have to.
And this is Adam Sachs. Thank you for being with us as we create the Emerald Planet.
I need a job.
Necesito trabajo.
I would like to speak English better.
Me gustaría hablar inglés mejor.
I want to be a U.S. citizen.
Quisiera ser ciudadano de los Estados Unidos.
For over 35 years,
Por más de 35 años,
the Hispanic Committee of Virginia has been serving our community.
el Comité Hispano de Virginia ha estado sirviendo a nuestra comunidad.
Job training and placement,
Capacitación, ayuda para conseguir trabajo,
education for children and adults,
educación para niños y adultos,
immigration, naturalization, and medical referrals.
ayuda para los procesos de inmigración y naturalización y orientación sobre médicos
Are a small part of what we do.
son solo una pequeña parte de lo que hacemos.
For help, information, or to volunteer,
Para ayuda, información o para ofrecerse como voluntario,
contact the Hispanic Committee of Virginia,
comuníquese con el Comité Hispano de Virginia,
helping everyone participate more fully in American society.
ayudando a todos a participar plenamente en la sociedad norteamericana.
Hey, Lena, where's yours?
Would you notice if you were missing half your kidney function? According to the National Kidney Foundation, 20 million people have chronic kidney disease, and 20 million more may be at risk and not even know it. Anyone with high blood pressure, diabetes, or family history of chronic kidney disease is at risk. Early diagnosis is vitally important. To get the whole story, talk to your doctor and visit the National Kidney Foundation at kidney.org or call for a free brochure. because when it comes to chronic kidney disease, you might not know the half.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you on a week-to-week basis looking around the globe for those 1,000 best practices, the technology, services, products, and also the leadership is making a difference as we move through the 21st century. The 21st century is going to see a planet that goes to possibly 9 billion people by 2050, and by the end of the century, maybe as many as 12 or 13 billion. So how are we going to be able to provide the food, the fuel, the fiber, everything that's needed, and at the same time to not just protect the environment, but to enhance and reverse global climate change. And we have a gentleman who's actually working on this very process as we speak. This is Dr. Michal Kravcik. He is the chairman and founding member of People and Water. This is a wonderful name. And he's coming to us by Skype out of Massachusetts. And then sitting right beside me is our special guest. This is Dr. Jose Colucci Rios. He is the professor, retired from the University of Puerto Rico. And Michal, welcome to the Emerald Planet TV.
Good evening, everybody. I'm happy to speak to American society.
And we're welcome to have you. Thank you very much for being with us. And I really like the name of your organization, People and Water. So tell us a little bit about your organization and then about tying people and water together.
Yeah, and my NGO was established after the Velvet Revolution in Central Europe. In Czechoslovakia, and we are working more than 20 years, and we are help for citizens to develop and to protect water in special in my region. We are very small NGO and we are volunteer just now, and the whole idea is about how to protect, how to motivate community to protect of water.
Now, looking at this direct correlation, I was inferring this earlier about water and people as the name of your NGO. But what's the direct correlation between people and water? Because, you know, there's some people that say, oh, that's up to nature, it takes care of itself. But we're finding that with the intervention of humankind, with the cycle of the environment, that we need to actually help this process a little bit. So tell us a little bit about that correlation, if you don't mind, Michal.
Yeah, it's very easy because we are water and water is people. And if we are looking in globally, we learn on the school that we have three-dimensional of water, ice, water, and air, but we forgot for life. And every life around us, like myself, you, and animals, and vegetation, trees, it's a third dimensional of water with its unique experience which are provided on the globe by a dynamic process of water everywhere.
Now, looking at this, if we can bring this slide back up, I want to have this here. Michal, just tell us a little bit about this new water paradigm. What is that? And this image we have here is very beautiful. But I know you're serious about your work, so you're telling us something through the picture itself.
And this picture is from a beautiful national park in Slovakia. It's a national park, it's High Tatras. It's some great space for vacation, for protection of nature. And a lot of people in Slovakia love this space and to visit. And this picture is on the book New Water Paradigm, and look above these clouds, how it's in harmony. It's not heavy rain, heavy clouds, but only like soft clouds, which is close to mountains in beautiful space of nature.
Yeah, I tell you, it's just fantastic. Anyway, we're moving right along. Jose, why don't you ask the next question?
Yes, good evening, Michal. This the water paradigm, what led you to develop the water paradigm? Could you give us more details on that?
Yeah, and after when we started after NGO, we are starting to develop how to like alternative solution and alternative policy in Slovakia, and we find this relationship impact from human activity to ecosystem and states of water and degradation of ecosystem and how to help to for ecosystem working for water. This is the main issue, and how to recycle water in small water cycle, because if we return water and keep rainwater on the landscape, it is some best for quality of water, it's best for photosynthesis process, for sequestration of carbon, and to vapor and make like thermoregulation system in everywhere. And after that, it's water vapor to atmosphere, create cloud, and compensate and return to system. Which means it's the whole problem is about this relationship, how to recycle water on the continent, and make good climate system everywhere.
Now, I have this image up here, and I think you're able to see it, Michael. Just walk us through the cycles that we have here, and just very slowly walk us through it, because this is really the very heart of what you're talking about, and it's much to the heart of your research that you're sharing around the globe. So if we can bring this image back up, please. Yes, just walk us through this, and then at the same time talk about how can we protect and the environment, but also how can we start to reverse some of the damage that's being done to the surface of the planet and the oceans and all the various areas of surface water.
Yeah, and we know that it is sea level rise, and we forgot for thinking about how is impact of desertification process of a continent to sea level rise, because we are usually speaking about melting of ice and another problem, but we forgot for desertification process of continent and sea level rise. This is very online impact about this relationship between continents and ocean. And whole idea about this concept, which I bring here on the conference, which organizes a great association, for Climate, to how to harvest rainwater to ecosystem and to stop runoff rainwater to sea, and to stop increasing of water table in oceans, together with this to prevent the scarcity of water on the continent in watershed, and together with this to help for increase intensity of photosynthesis and product great possibility for prevention to flood prevention, heavy storm prevention, and to build great capacity for stabilization whole climate system of planet Earth.
Now, why are you emphasizing in this, Michael? We're going to stay with this image because I really like this. It's very explanatory. But why do you make such great emphasis on the small water cycle versus the large water cycle? And what is the impact on the climate, but also on the planet between these two, the small and the large cycles?
Yeah, and maybe it will be better to speaking about short water cycle, because the short is very fast to return to system in cycling of ecosystem, and because it's this is very important, because we learn that it's water is renewable energy, but in natural ecosystem is true. But if we are a change of, for example, sealing, paving, asphalting of ecosystem, after that it is runoff, it's very fast flow down and to river and to sea, and it is too dangerous. And with water, it is loss from small water cycle. The degradation process is desert zone, because it's small water cycle is empty, after it's for perspective. It is important to understand, because if we have a lot of water in nature, after that it's solar energy transformed to consume of the vapor water to atmosphere. And loss of water from ecosystem means to transform with solar energies to sensible heat. A lot of energy is flowing from dry land to atmosphere and make chaotic, dangerous situation for heavy storm, tornado, hurricanes, and so on. Which means solution is very simple: to invite everybody on the globe, people like in US, in Slovakia, in Europe, Africa, everywhere, to harvest rainwater on the continent, and we will be success, and everybody will win.
Yeah, we have on the Emerald Planet TV, we probably have about 18 to 24 shows just on water harvesting and the various technologies, and most of it's quite simple. And in Washington, D.C., there's a comprehensive plan here that's been implemented now over the last 5 years about how to harvest the water in place instead of having it going into the drainage system or the wastewater system and trying to manage it that way, but keep it in place even at the buildings within downtown areas. So I applaud you for what you're doing. Jose, next question.
Yes, Michael, following on the comments by Dr. Hancock, how the people and the communities can apply the new water paradigm in their local areas and into their daily lives?
Today we are spoke on the conference how to make it locally and with contribution to globally, which means every community, every person on planet Earth can to participate to harvest rainwater, because if you are living on the house and just now it's all in all water paradigm means to we are connected to pipe by sewage system, and rainwater is going down to sea, and everybody, every ownership of a house can harvest this rainwater to garden and to then rainwater to small. Which means if you have, for example, 100 square meter of roof, you can harvest annually about maybe 100 cubic meter, which is just now run up to sea, and it is contribution to sea level rise. We can to return this water to God, because if we are said that water is from God, is gift from God, we need to return this gift.
Michael, we're going to lose you. We're leaving off. This is Dr. Michal Kravcik, who is the chairman, founding member, People and Water. He's working around the world on water harvesting. And thank you for being with us as we look at this most critical issue of harvesting water as we create the Emerald Planet.
This year, 28,000 Americans will be diagnosed with oral cancer. Every year, 7,000 Americans die of oral cancer.
I'm Eva Cohen, and I'm an oral cancer survivor. I didn't fit the profile. I didn't smoke or drink. I had no family history of cancer, no family history of cancer. I was 31 years old. 31 years old. I went to see my dentist about a sore in my mouth that wouldn't heal. It was oral cancer. I had to have a radical neck dissection and a portion of my tongue reconstructed. I didn't know if I was going to live or die.
I'm Surgeon General Richard Carmona. The survival rate for oral cancer is only 50%. Oral cancer can happen to anyone. If you have a sore or lesion in your mouth that doesn't heal within 2 weeks, see your dentist. Early detection is the key.
Early detection saves lives. I know.
1 in 8 Americans goes hungry. One idea helped change that. A community started a garden that blossomed into farmers markets. 1 in 6 children lives in poverty. One group of women found an answer by opening a daycare center that their neighbors could afford. Today, 36 million Americans live in poverty. But one by one, people are helping themselves and each other to change the picture of poverty to one of hope. For easy ways you can help, visit povertyusa.org.
2 words for you. Pop quiz. Ready? Name any funny movie. A drama. Name a mystery. And one more thing. Name the movie your kids saw today in science class.
Know what really matters. Know about your kid's school. And know about your kid. Find out 100 ways to know more, do more.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello, I'm Dr. Sam Hancock of Emerald Planet in Washington, D.C. We're looking around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for those best practices, things that are very practical, that can actually address severe climate change, and at the same time to prepare a planet that's adding 2 billion new people by 2050. And I have a gentleman coming on who I think is just doing absolutely amazing work out in Nevada. This is John Griggs. He's a ranch manager for Maggie Creek Ranch in Elko, Nevada. And then sitting right beside me, and I should say that John's coming in to us by Skype from Massachusetts. And then sitting right beside me is Dr. Jose Colucci Rios, professor retired from the University of Puerto Rico, as our special guest. John, welcome to the Emerald Planet TV.
Hey, thank you for having me. Good to be with you.
Now, I went out and did a lot of research. I've heard about your ranch out there, and I saw a number of newspaper articles and other kinds of media, and it's just amazing what you're doing. I was actually raised on a ranch, but smallish compared to yours. We were only 1,200 acres, and yours is a little bit larger than that. And we're in Southwest Virginia when we started. But tell us a little bit about the Maggie Creek Ranch and this area where you are out in Elko, Nevada.
Yes, Maggie Creek Ranch is in the Elko County, Nevada, which is in the northeast corner of the state. And it's high desert country, goes in elevation from about 5,000 to 8,000 feet. And it's a high desert, like I said, so about 10 inches of precip a year on a typical year, and most of that comes in snowfall. So very, very dry climate. And Maggie Creek Ranch is a cow-calf operation, and we run on that high desert environment, and we've had some good luck slowing some water down and putting it to work for us.
Yeah, when I was living in Australia, I had a chance to visit just about every 4 weeks a very large station called Dahomey, and it looks much like your area there. You know, it was much lower elevation than you because you're in a high desert plain, but very same look. Tell us a little bit about your role as a farm manager. You've received many awards and much acclaim as far as the work you're doing there to bring water back to this area and increase the flow of water. Tell us a little bit about a ranch manager that's not only just taking care of cattle and forage, but trying to protect the environment at the same time.
Right. Well, really, Sam, it's not really a story about me. It's a story about a lot of people. Maggie Creek Ranch is about half public land managed by the Bureau of Land Management, and it's our partners at BLM and other agency folks. We came together, and particularly one of our partners is a fisheries biologist there, Carol Evans, came to us and said, you know, we'd like to do a better job on a couple of these streams. How can we do that, and how can you make it work for you guys? And we collaborated on that over the last 20 years and figured out how to make it work for us. And it was really well. We timed our grazing to avoid hot season grazing, and we got some critical help from some beavers that came in and helped to slow the water down, spread it out, and together with our other partners, really, those awards are celebrating those relationships in my mind.
Yeah, and I actually have some work with the BLM in California near Ridgecrest, which is in the Mojave Desert and High Desert Plain, just like where you are. and actually been setting up what we call College of the Desert there to talk about some of these things. But looking at, I want to go back to these images that we have here, John, if you don't mind.
Okay.
And this is quite a transition from 1999, if we can bring these slides, there we go, up through the images we have right here, 2013. I think we have one from 2014. But tell us what we're really looking at. I mean, this is amazing transformation, but the what and the how and the process to get from the one there in 1991 all the way over to 2013.
Right. So clearly the slide on the left is the before picture, and that was in the early 90s. And we that creek is Susie Creek, and it was part of several pastures. There was pasture fence that kind of crisscrossed back and forth going up Susie Creek, and that creek was part of several pastures, and those pastures were rest rotated but never really excluded during the hot season. So cows had been in there too long, and especially too long during the hot season, which resulted in what you're seeing there on the left. And as I said, Carol Evans came to us and said, I think we'd like to make some changes there, and how can we do that, and can we make it work for you? And with half of that riparian corridor already being fenced, it was fairly simple to fence the other half and create riparian pastures. And then once we did that, recovery really, in my estimation, came pretty quick. Within a couple of years, we saw dramatic improvement in vegetation, and it wasn't long we were putting it to use. We for most of the process we grazed it, and we would rotate how we used it. So some years it'd be spring, some years it'd be fall, some years spring and fall, and some years not at all. And so about 4 or 5 years into it, we had good regrowth. We had willows coming along the creek, and things were coming along good. And then beavers showed up. And you know, agrarian Americans, we want to control what we can control, because there's so much that we can't, weather, markets, and policy, and things like that. So it's hard for a guy like me to let go to a beaver. And I was afraid that we were going to lose all the good that we'd done. And I visited with Carol about it. I remember it very well. I said, "What are we going to do? Do we need to start doing something?" And Carol said, "Well, let's give it some time. Let's see what happens." And we had a relationship that I trusted, and I trusted her, and we did. And thank God we did. They moved in, they slowed the water down, they spread it out over that incised channel, and trapped a lot of sediment, and encouraged a lot of other plant growth. And then the interesting thing too is that eventually they kind of moved on in a lot of places, and so some of that turned into cattail marsh for a while, and now some of that's turned into wet meadow, which is really where the money meets the road for a guy like me, because that wet meadow provides good forage. But then when you think about 2015 and 4 years of prolonged severe drought, to have that green wet meadow to provide forage, but then to have that water for stock water, where a lot of folks in my part of the world are hauling water to cattle, and a lot of folks are worried about wells they're having to put the pumps in deeper because the water table is dropping. To have all that free water that you see there, and really the 2015 picture doesn't look a whole lot different than what you're seeing right there, and in some cases probably more water. So to have that water available to our livestock and that green forage is just incredible, just incredible.
John, can you tell us a little bit about, I want to leave these images up because I just think this is so striking, but Adam Sachs, the gentleman you're working with that introduced us to you, the executive director of the Biodiversity for a Livable Climate, I asked him in a recent seminar at the University of District of Columbia, where did the beavers come from? Because if you look at these dry areas, I can't imagine there's beaver there. And all of a sudden you have beaver coming in and moving in and putting in their beaver dams. And then you see the benefit on the right side of this image. I mean, it's just incredible. Where were the beavers the whole time?
You know, that's a very good question. I don't have the answer for it, really. So you're looking at Susie Creek. Next drainage over is Maggie Creek. And we did have beaver there. But to say that, and both those creeks are tributaries of the Humboldt River, but I feel like they couldn't have gone down one creek and back up the other. There was too many segments that hadn't caught up yet. So they had to come over. To my mind, they had to have. And you thinking about a beaver waddling over desert rangelands is just incredible to me. And what made them think they should do that? I just can't get my mind around it.
Well,
I wish I had a better answer.
Well, and then too, you see this image of this little beaver here. Of course, we got this drainage coming from the snowpack and the fish and this is just an amazing story. Jose, how about the next question about the future?
Yeah, good evening, John. One question is, based on all your experiences, what would you recommend for restoration efforts in Nevada? I mean, you have quite experiences there. What would you recommend then for Nevada then?
Yes, thank you, Jose. Good evening. The first thing for me to think about for Nevada's approximately 80 to 90% public land, managed by agencies like Bureau of Land Management or Forest Service. So primarily we need to work on the relationships between land managers such as BLM and ranchers on the ground. In some cases those relationships aren't great, and we need to prop those up. What we've been doing, celebrating our good relationship, has sure helped, and that's coming along. Another thing along those lines is that it's getting really tough for land managers on the ground in Nevada to get through the process. I hate to call it bureaucratic process, but that's to get through the process to be able to do something. A brief example is that in one of these riparian pastures, Carol and I want to change the fence because it's not working in its current configuration. And to change this fence took about a year, maybe a year and a half of process. That's not pounding fence posts. That's not actual work. That's paperwork and
yeah, it's just the bureaucracy. John, exactly. We've absolutely run out of time. This is a fascinating topic, and we really appreciate you sharing about all this and providing these fantastic images that you have here about how we can actually start to reverse and even change the climate. This is John Griggs, the ranch manager of Maggie Creek Ranch, Elko, Nevada. Thank you for being with us as we create the Emerald Planet.
Impressive. Wow.
Thank you, sir. This is impressive what they're doing. My God.
God, what, 90%?
Yeah, that's right.
Some dreams are universal. Dreams that inspire us.
Wow.
Multiple sclerosis is a devastating disease that changes lives forever. The National MS Society does more for people with MS than any organization in the world.
Zimbabwe.
But we can't do it alone. To get involved, visit us online at nationalmssociety.org or call 1-800-FIGHT-MS.
Yeah.
This is why we're here.
I was in Tanzania. I've been in this area where she's from. This is another amazing story.
Because nobody dreams of having multiple sclerosis.
Wow.
What's wrong with this picture?
Really?
Half of young Americans can't locate economic powers like Japan and India. 20% can't even find the Pacific Ocean. Without geography, our children aren't ready for the world. Geography is everywhere. It's incredible creatures, rhythm, fashion, flavor. It's economics and politics. It's change. Understanding connections between people and places is critical in the 21st century. That's why we created mywonderfulworld.org. Go there now for your free parent and teacher action kits and give our kids the power of global knowledge.
In spite of.
Because kids who understand our world today can succeed in it tomorrow.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello, I'm Dr. Sam Hancock, the President and Executive Director of Emerald Planet and also of the Emerald Planet TV. We come to you on a week-to-week basis from Washington, D.C. and the United States as we're looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technologies, services, products, in over 144 different nations. And we're just absolutely constantly amazed at all the things that are going on to address, but also to possibly reverse the negative impacts of climate change. And we have someone from Zimbabwe. This is Precious Phiri, who is the founding director of what's called EarthWisdom. This is a great name. AgricSolutions for Global Sustenance of Zimbabwe. And she's right now in Massachusetts at a conference. And then sitting right beside me is our special guest, Dr. Jose Colucci Rios. He is a professor retired from the University of Puerto Rico. So Precious, welcome to the Emerald Planet TV.
Oh, hi, thank you. And thank you for having me.
Oh, no, we're blessed to have you. And it was really a great pleasure to meet you in Washington, D.C., and you did an absolutely fantastic job. And I wish we had enough time for you to actually sing your song, but I'm not sure we'll be able to do that. But who knows? We may work that in yet.
Okay.
But Precious, tell us a little bit about, this is a great name, this EarthWisdom AgricSolutions for Global Sustenance. And of course, this was being done in Zimbabwe. And tell us a little bit about your organization, and then we're going to get into just the very simple but profound things that you're doing there to address severe climate change.
Okay. So I formed EarthWisdom after a great inspiration of working with Alan Savory at the Africa Center for Holistic Management, an institute by Savory in Zimbabwe. So it's meant to support communities and work with communities that are doing amazing work, healing their grasslands in the Hwange area of Zimbabwe. So I come from Zimbabwe, the western side of Zimbabwe.
Yeah, we actually have projects going on in Hwange District at this time with schools and health clinics and all that with a good friend of mine that's in my Rotary Club. But looking at this image here, and of course, you've got the wildlife there in the foreground, and you see the cow in the back. Tell us a little bit about what we're looking at here. And then what is your experience as far as this balance between cattle, local communities, and the climate?
Okay, so the image that you're looking at is an image of wild herds. I'm seeing zebras, there's buffalo, and this can be anything. In this case, in the Americas, can be bison, all your bucks that you have here, I think it's deers. And so we are using livestock or cattle and sheep and goats to heal grasslands, because we believe and we know that grasslands co-evolved with wild herds that were moved around by hunting animals like lions and leopards. And so we are then taking the same notion, using livestock to move around our grazing areas with herders. So in this case, herders are now the lions who are just helping to heal the land. And this is a concept that was founded by Alan Savory to help bring back the grasslands that we had long back into our lands, so that we help build up the soil and capture water. That's the basic and the crux of our work.
Well, this is looking at this image right here, Precious. I want, if you don't mind, explaining in detail what we're actually looking at. But as we see it here, it's only a few years in between. It's the exact same site, but this is after you actually were moving the cattle about, correct?
Yes.
Tell us about these two images. This is absolutely fascinating.
The 2006 picture actually had been bare and highly eroded for more than 30 years. And we applied the tool of livestock, which is animal impact, the chipping effect of animal hooves, and the dung and the urination of livestock. We put a corral or an enclosure in that same spot and moved livestock all around that area. We received rains, so we started seeing changes just from the first season of rains, but it's been getting better and better. So the other picture is 3 years later with not so much of a difference between the amounts of rainfall received. The biggest idea was to make the ground ready to receive the water and to make good use of it and grow back the grass.
Yeah, so what you're doing is actually using the dung and the urea as the nutrients, and then with the hooves, you're actually breaking up the clay and the soils and the rock that's in there so that actually the water can then be caught and then hopefully go into the ground. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Definitely making the most of every drop that comes. We need it in the ground.
It's just incredible, Precious, what you're doing. It's so impressive. Jose, question, please.
Yes, good evening, Precious. You mentioned earlier holistic. Could you elaborate on the meaning of holistic management of the cattle, the land, and community resources in a country like Zimbabwe?
Okay. For us, what it means is it has become a tool that we have used to reclaim back our lives. So holistic management is a decision-making framework that makes sure that people make decisions that are economically, biologically, and socially sound. Just for everyday living. It's not only for grasslands, it's not to get water back, but it helps in everyday living. Every decision that we make has to take us to some sort of a life that we desire, a life that we value. So in a place like Zimbabwe, in a place like my own community, it has helped us reclaim our land, reclaim our dignity and our lives, at the same time feeding ourselves.
Yeah, looking at this, and again, the reason I want to go over these slides, and it's just mind-boggling that this could be the very same area, and this you explained when you were at UDC. So tell us about this transformation where you can go from this very dry riverbed to something that's actually vibrant and is sustaining not only the water, but also the land and the air within this community.
Okay, so the thing is, no matter how much rain you can receive in an area, as long as you do not have a good ecosystem or a good land worked out so that you make the use of the rains, you have a drought literally every year because your rivers flash flood, you don't retain water. You just have water for the few months that we have rain, which is 3 to 4 months in our case. Wow. And if we were to compact the month, it's anything between 1 month to 2 months of rain every day. But so the river on the left, which says the neighboring community, this was a neighboring community, exactly the peak of the rains with the property of the Savory Institute called the Africa Center for Holistic Management on the right. So they've worked on their land, practiced holistic plant grazing, used livestock to reclaim the riverbanks, to make them stable, and have all the riparian vegetation that is needed to promote the underground water. And you get clean springs of water just flowing all year round. Yet just the neighboring communities, it's totally the opposite. So the transformation is just the decision to take charge, to use holistic plant grazing, use the tool of animal impact, and gets life back, regardless of the amount of rain, because we have 15 to 25 inches of rain, both on the left and on the right.
Yeah, and I know this, having lived in Australia. I was traveling in the outback, and it was 7 years drought at the time I was there. And in 2 hours, we had 2 foot of water when I was trying to get to Ayers Rock. And that's why I can relate to this image that you have here, because the ground is so hard, just nothing penetrates. So it comes, it goes through the streams, goes out to the ocean, or just instantly evaporates.
So where the water goes is dependent on the land manager. You can have the water to yourself or you can give it to your neighbors.
Yeah, and that's what you're talking about right here.
Yeah.
Going to this next image here, we have, this is the treated areas where you have the livestock and control. Tell us about how you actually go about this process. I know this was a study, so you have the controlled crop in front and the animal treated area in the back. What is actually the process, Precious, as far as moving the cattle? How often do you move them? And do you feed them at the place where they're actually grazing at the time? Just a little bit about how this system actually works.
Okay, so after grazing in the rangelands, we also promote just food security in a regenerative and organic way, where we crawl or enclose livestock. So they are enclosed just in the evenings, not the whole day. Mm-hmm. So after grazing, they come back to the corrals, where we encircle them in materials called boma sheets, or just crawls, or just enclosures. And so in one spot, in a crop field or a garden, if you will, they stay for 7 nights. So we've tested quite a couple of days, 5 days, 10 days, but then we found out in our soils, 7 days just works perfectly. And we measure a corral according to how many numbers of cattle we have. Because at least we give one cow or one animal 2.5 to 3 square meters of land to get good impact. And so when that happens, we then plow using 0 or minimum tillage, because animal hoofs will be tilled, and we do not need synthetic fertilizers because the dung and the urine have fed the land. And so we plant these crops and we make the most of the water that comes. We plant earlier. And what we've noticed is that these people who practice animal-impacted crop fields, they have harvested 2 to 3 times more food than other communities who don't.
Yeah, and that's also eliminating, as you're saying, the chemical fertilizers and insecticides and pesticides. This is a marvelous story. We're absolutely running out of time. Jose had one more question, but I'm not sure we'll get to it. Just tell us, Precious, what do you see for the growth of your organization and the spread of this type of process across not only just Zimbabwe, but all of the African continent, all 54 countries?
So the training model of holistic management, we have shaped it in a way that every native of every land can use it according to how it suits their culture, how it suits their land. And as for my personal organization, I'm seeing lots of growth, lots of empowered communities, empowered women to take care of the environment while enjoying economic incentives of doing the work that they are doing.
I think it's fantastic. This is Precious Phiri. She is the founding director of EarthWisdom, AgricSolutions for Climate Sustenance in Zimbabwe. And thank you for being with us. Jose, thank you very much for joining us. Very good job all. And thank you, dear viewer, for being with us as we look around the globe to create the Emerald Planet.